Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Pinniped Community Meeting. Today's date is October 7th, 2021. If you're watching this from home, we would encourage you to come and join us live. We meet every first and third Thursday of the month at 9 a.m. Pacific time. It's a good opportunity for you to meet the maintainers, hear what we're working on, provide feedback, and ask any questions that you may have on using Pinniped. You're also welcome just to sit and listen in silence. We don't force any participation, so it's a very welcoming community meeting. When you attend, you are welcome to put down any discussion topics down at the bottom of the agenda here in the discussion topics section. If you aren't able to join us for these meetings, you can find us on the Slack channel at Kubernetes Slack Workspace in Pinniped and on Twitter at Project Pinniped. We do ask that when you are attending the meetings or engaging with us on any of the channels, whether it's Twitter, GitHub, or Slack, that you read and abide by our code of conduct. And next, we also are wanting you to put down your name and any organization that you represent when you attend these meetings. It just helps us keep track of who from outside of the maintainers is joining, and we want to keep the discussions open and just kind of learn more about who is using Pinniped. Additionally, if you are actively using Pinniped, we want to know more about how you're using it. So we have created this GitHub discussion item, and you can add those details within a comment on this discussion. Next up, we have some announcements. Just a reminder that Pinniped has a few talks surrounding KubeCon and Cloud Native Con next week. We have the one that's on Friday, October 15th at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. You can watch it either virtually, or if you're attending in person, you can watch it then as well. It's everything wrong with the Kubernetes authentication and how we worked around it. Mo and Margot go kind of more in depth on Pinniped and why we built it and how to use it, and kind of all the nitty gritty stuff with that. It should be very informative if you're really interested in learning more about Pinniped. And the next up, we are also going to be at a co-located event, which happens before the main conference begins on Tuesday, October 12th at 2:25 p.m. Pacific time. And that is with Mo and Anjali. It's Pinniped, a unified framework for user authentication to Kubernetes clusters. And again, you have to be registered for KubeCon, Cloud Native Con, and that co-located event of Cloud Native Security Conference. I believe you also can watch it in person or attend it virtually. All right.
A quick question. Do you happen to know if attending KubeCon virtually, like what the cost is if you're not like employed by like
if you're not going to be in person?
Yeah, like if you're virtual, okay, so it's like $75. It's not that expensive. I was just curious how much they charged.
Yeah, $75 to attend virtually. And then if you want to attend in person, there's a few rates here. If you're an individual that doesn't work for a company that is paying for your way, then it's $700. Academic, if you're a student, it's $150. And then if you're, attending on behalf of a company that is paying for your ride, it's $1,550. Any other questions or comments regarding these? Okay. Next up, we have project roadmap. So we have improving security posture supervisor token refresh fails when the upstream refresh token no longer works for OIDC. And looks like the timeline for that is, I guess, by the end of this month. Anybody want to go over more details regarding that?
Yeah, so this is work we have in progress to make sure that when you refresh your token with Pinniped, then we check back with your external IDP. So if your Okta session has expired or your, Google or anything else, then we make sure to keep that in sync.
And how's the work coming along for that? Is it looking good to be released by mid-October, end of October?
Probably closer to end of October, just because, well, next week, Mo and I will be at KubeCon.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not happening next week.
Yeah, next week's a bit of a wash.
Yeah. So after that, I think we're making good
Yeah, I
progress.
think
But
some
probably,
folks have a PTO planned coming up too. So somewhere soon. They might be in November though. I might be misremembering.
Yeah, we may have
Yeah.
some MVP content coming in earlier and then, some of the content coming in later. So it may be end of October or it may go into November.
a little hard to say.
Okay. That's just some good information for anyone who's wondering about when to expect that. So thank you. Okay, any other updates before we move on to discussion topics? So we got this Helm chart discussion on Slack, which I can't really show unless I show my desktop. Mo, do you want me to show the whole discussion?
I can talk through it if you want me to do that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, it is on the Kubernetes Slack, so anyone can go and look at the actual content. But we had an individual ask some questions in Slack yesterday. They were having some config issues. We helped them sort it out, and just it's the usual OIDC the pain kind of deal. Everything was fine though. They got their Okta IDP hooked up like they wanted. I guess they were happy with it because then they asked, "Hey, can I make a PR and make a Helm chart?" And that started a discussion with another individual chimed in saying that, hey, Carvel and all that stuff is great, but I would love to use a Helm chart because that's what my company uses, etc. I did some searching through our Slack channel for the string Helm to find all the other people in the past that had mentioned it in some capacity, and I sort of CC'd them on there. I think that puts us at least 5 people within our community that have either written their own Helm charts or requested that we have a Helm chart. And in that Slack thread, there are at least 2 examples. So 2 separate individuals have written their Helm charts and posted them online somewhere. So we have 2 at least examples there of that being a need. Let's see what else. So we had an issue a long time ago on GitHub that someone had asked about this, and we ended up sort of closing it. I'm trying to remember what we had said on the closing message, but at a really high level, if you wanted to make a Helm chart for Pinniped and have it be tested as robustly as we test all of our other things, you have to have access to our CI system, which is completely private. And also, even if our CI repo was public, you still couldn't run any of the things that it has inside of it because it requires access to our GKE account, which is very private, includes all of our secrets to all of our CI infrastructure. So that makes it technically challenging for us to, well, it makes it near technically impossible for someone to make a PR that actually is tested. Certainly make a PR that they have tested locally, but they can't make that PR that's tested in our pipelines. So that's a little, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't sort of match the rest of the project. So, I brought this up because I didn't know what we wanted to do. Obviously, we could do nothing, which is what we're currently doing. We could maybe have a link in our docs that says, "Hey, here's some unofficial Helm charts." That does make me nervous because this is a security product. So the way you deploy it is important. And I don't want to encourage some deployment that I haven't validated. So that is a concern. We can try to maintain one ourselves, but now we will be maintaining CAP, kubectl, and Helm. The burden on us further increases. So that's a bit concerning. We could maybe have something like have a CI flow that's like adds on to our current CI flow, but is like based off of GitHub Actions, so that the CI-ness of it lives in the main repo, and thus you could make a PR and also update that CI thing, and thus also get validated, and thus it will meet the requirements of you need to test stuff that you put in this project. It would be kind of weird because then we have like 2 CI systems, or maybe it's not that big of a deal because it'll just be like some YAML or whatever GitHub Actions uses. But yeah, those are sort of, I think, the high level thoughts I had. I do get the sense that there is a need and desire for this to exist. People are willing to go write their own and sort of suffer through it. And I do think over the lifetime of the project, we have technically made it a little bit harder because our deployment YAML has gotten more and more special as we've added more and more nuanced features. And to be fair, I plan on further continuing that trend, right? There's a ton of things that we could do to our deployment YAML to better indicate to the kubelet how to health check us and how to liveness check us and how to upgrade us and those types of things. And I would want other members of the community to inherit those instead of like being on some random fork Helm chart that has like a deployment from like the 07 release or something. But that's kind of the high level of it. I want to get folks' opinion on what we think we should do.
Yeah, it's hard for me to estimate exactly what that support burden would be like if we just said, bit the bullet and said, hey, we're going to actually fully support this and we're going to have all these tests. I think it's its own kind of different syntax from kubectl or YTT, so we need to kind of understand that third way of writing everything and continually update it when Pinniped changes or when Helm changes. That still feels like it. I don't know. I worry about doing GitHub Actions and having it be separate. That things.
Yeah, the only thing that sort of made me vaguely even consider the GitHub Actions things was the fact that today with kubectl, we cheat a little bit because we say, hey, we're just going to render the default with YTT and just tell kubectl to apply it, but we don't do any validation of any tweaking of that YAML with kubectl. We just kind of, and I think that's fine. I don't think that's a big deal. The difference with that is, we're just saying here's some easy to use manifests. With CAP, you have a bunch of stuff you can set right in our whatever the values YAML that lets you tweak stuff, and then you can do overlays with YTT and all that. Helm is similar to that, right? Like if you're meant to sort of pre-installation time be able to change stuff, right? And so the burden of us is, I think, a little higher because as we add fancy stuff to our cap thing, like, hey, if you set this flag, this thing in the deployment changes or whatever, right? The trivial thing would be like the number of replicas, right? We would want to replicate that in Helm. Not really sure how we validate that any of that works. Other than, I mean, yeah, we would run it and hope it doesn't immediately crash, but you know, you could forget to wire the replicas and it would not crash, right? Like, so it would run with whatever number of replicas, probably one or something. So I have concerns there because we're not Helm users, right? Like I don't have anything for or against Helm, just in the sort of same way that I don't really have anything for or against any of the Carvel tools. It's a way of making YAML happen, and the YAML happens to be a Kubernetes language of choice.
I think early on in the project, I was one of the maintainers who was encouraging us not to do Helm charts. And it's not because I have anything against Helm. It's because we were changing our own YAML files, our deployment files, on an almost daily basis, or at least a weekly basis. And it would have been a big burden to every time we want to make a change on an everyday, weekly basis, to have to change it into two different formats, into Helm and YTT. But we have slowed down quite a bit as the project starts to get a little more mature, and that we don't change those very often. Now maybe we change them once a month. Maybe that's not a concern anymore. The concern would be, can we come up with a way to make sure that if we do an official Helm chart, that it stays kind of in sync with our YTT manifest, that all the knobs that we offer in YTT, or at least the ones that we care to offer in Helm, we offer them and they work correctly, meaning that they render the right YAML at the end of the day correctly. So I wonder if we could write some kind of, if we do want to support Helm, because it does seem like there's some signal from the community that we didn't have before, that people are interested. But more than just one person, like quite a few people, for us, at least in the scale of our community, 5 people is a strong signal. So I wonder if there's some way we could, if we do want to do the work, come up with some kind of unit tests to say, like, I render the YTT with these knobs, I render the Helm with these knobs, and what I end up with is effectively the same YAML. And something like that might give us the confidence that we're doing it right, that we can continue to do it right in the future. And of course, we'd want to probably, similar to what we were doing recently, or I think Margot did with kubectl, is we've added some tests to our CI to make sure that we're deploying with kubectl and that we can run the integration tests against something that was deployed with kubectl, and everything works fine. I guess we'd want to do the same thing with Helm. And for context, for people watching the video, normally in CI we deploy with cap, which is one of the Carvel tools for deployment, similar to kubectl, but has some nice fancy options. What Margot did recently was make sure we're also testing with kubectl.
What about doing something kind of in the middle and seeing if the Bitnami team was willing to create a Bitnami chart, which may not be an official Pinniped chart, but considering that they are the Helm masters and have access possibly to the same accounts or accounts that may be able to be considering its internal team, where maybe having a more official chart than just some random person building one, and then having it be whatever, just as another option, possibly because they do have an entire CI system for testing their Helm charts internally as well. And that burden could be taken off of the Pinniped team then possibly, and still getting a relatively official chart.
That's an interesting idea, Scott. You may or may not be surprised to know that we don't really know the Bitnami folks, even though we're at the same company. It's big company. Although we've interacted with them a little bit, like I've submitted a pull request against one of their container images. But I think a lot of them are based in Europe, so there's a time zone challenge. I think that's a good idea. It's something we could reach out to that team.
I mean, I can also, I know a lot of the charts are added there just from issues on their GitHub of whatever, of, you know, requesting a chart. I think it may be a way to start is just by having a community thread. I can open up an issue there even, and then we can, whatever, just add that into the Slack thread and have anyone that's interested in it ping there as well on the issue. And maybe through community request, it may also happen through the Bitnami team. I can try and open up an issue there for that later today.
Thanks, Scott. That actually kind of makes me think of one more small thing, which is somebody volunteered to do the work. And as Mo pointed out, we aren't set up yet for that person to do the CI work. But we could potentially, you know, think about what would our requirements be if we wanted to do our own Helm charts. Like, would our requirement be that we have exactly the same knobs between YTT and Helm, for example, or could we drop some? But whatever our requirements are, if we shared them with that person, maybe they would want to do the work, and then we would just have to figure out how do we accept that work? Like, how do we add it to CI? How do we make sure we feel that we can test it and maintain it going forward? Because they'll do the initial work, but that's no promise that they'll come back and keep it maintained every time we make a change. That'll be on us.
So if I understand the suggestion, Ryan, it would be that if we can nail down a set of requirements for the for lack of a better term, for the production side of the Helm chart, we could theoretically have a community member do that work, and then we would take the non-production side, the maintenance burden and the CI style stuff, because that's sort of still in our area of influence and control right now. And you know, it could be something as simple as, you know, we, if they were able to meet those requirements, you know, we could merge them in, and then, but purposely not do a release until after we have the CI stuff ready, and then, or at least a release that has those artifacts available until we have the CI stuff nailed down. And that's, I like the idea of allowing a community member to be involved if they want to be involved. And while I might, you know, put a higher burden on like one of us, like, don't write stuff without tests, I don't necessarily, as long as the tests do get written, I don't necessarily want to say that a community member has to figure out how to do those, basically because we made it impossible right now for them to do it.
It sounds like we have a few different avenues to explore, right? Scott had a good folks and see if they'd be interested in maintaining such a thing. We had to explore trying to guide someone from the community who's interested in contributing it so that we could work with them to do the testing part. We could explore doing it all ourselves. It might not be that hard. Just adding the additional maintenance burden, that's the initial work, might not be very much. It's all a question of priority. So all of these things require some effort. Well, I guess if Bitnami wanted to do it, that's no effort, but the other two options require some scheduling.
Brian doesn't have his video on, but I think he's looking at Anjali.
Yeah, I do like the Bitnami suggestion, to be honest. If we can pursue that, I think, you know, more contributions that come to us, that would be great. So I'm leaning more towards it. but of course, happy to explore the other two options also.
Okay. Sounds like we have kind of concluded this. Is there anything else to discuss further? So it sounds like one of the action items is, Scott, you're going to touch base, reach out to Bitnami.
Yeah, I'll open up a issue there, and then also send the link to the issue in the Slack conversation, so that people can comment there and thumbs up the issue, so that they get some traction on that. And I know that there have been a few that have been added into Bitnami before, where they say we can't do the initial leg room, but we will maintain it after. So that may be also a way for the community member who said that he would be willing to do that initial work, would be possibly, you guys sitting down with him, deciding what those requirements would be of that Helm chart. He could do the initial work, create a PR for them if they're willing to, through the issue, through the conversation there. And then, they can maintain it from that point on, the Bitnami team possibly. So I'll get that out a bit later today, and then ping that on Slack.
That's great, Scott. Thank you so much for taking that on.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Scott,
This
is
might
this
be a-
the repo that you're talking about, the one that I just put in chat?
Yes, that's the one.
Awesome, thank you.
This is Mo is a Helm new. I just maybe Scott knows better than us. Scott, do you think it would be easy enough to have the API group suffix stuff somehow worked in, so our cap stuff has some magic?
Very
Okay,
easy to do, actually, because the one issue that you have is that everything has to be just a variable, but it's not difficult to add that in through Go templating, because in the end, Helm is A, not YAML aware, B, not Kubernetes aware in terms of its templating. It's just text aware. So if you just have a default value, which would be in the values YAML of what the API suffix should be by default, all the user would need to do is change the default value there, and it would be updated in every single YAML that you templated out using Go templating.
Okay, cool. That's what I thought. Also, looking at their list, they have Contour on there and Concourse. So seems like a good place where we could have, like, I don't see any Pinniped in the P section.
Yeah, no, it definitely seems a lot of the other OSS, tools from VMware are there, even though they also have YTT manifests, and they seem to be maintained by the Bitnami team, though. So I think that it definitely makes sense to be there. It does mean also, though, and this is, one thing, is that once it's not released together with Pinniped, that means that it will always trail behind. The Contour there, I think, usually comes out about a week or so after Contour is released. So that's something that users would need to know. But I think that that's a reasonable, limitation, and just pointing towards the Bitnami Helm repo if this happens in the documentation of Pinniped. And, at that point, people, just go to Bitnami if there's an issue with the chart. So I think that's definitely, I think it would be cool to have, because that also means it gets added into Cube apps and things like that, which people then have a UI to deploy it into their clusters and can, do some special things in that case as well. So it adds some nice things when it comes through the Bitnami chart, for sure.
Do we have any other topics for the meeting, Nancy?
Nope, no other topics. All right. So thank you everyone for today's community meeting. Thank you, Scott, for your participation as always and all your help. We really appreciate you. And if you're watching this from home, again, we would love to have you join us live and learn more about you and your usage of Pinniped. And hopefully you'll become an active member of our community. With that, have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.